kingdom of Israel! Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart be also.
The book of Psalms, chapter 16 and verse 11. It says, "Thou wilt show me the path of life." So we're on the path of life. The path of life leads to paradise. The path of life leads to glory, which the glory is the kingdom of heaven. And we're on that path of life. We're walking on the path of the tree of life to gain eternal life.
Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not. And yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothed the grass, which is today in the field and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O ye of little? And seek not ye what ye shall eat, what ye shall drink, neither ye of dying. These things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth.
Joy.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakadash, double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and then sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah. All right. And what I want to get into, which was lesson, dealing with, all right, the down spiral of American society and the birth of technocracy. Okay. Because we have to understand what this thing called America, it was always a stepping stone, all right, for the elites, to forward, all right, a one world order. Okay. And they use, America, in several different ways. All right, to weaken the nations, to put these nations in debt, all right, to get these nations to follow, the mold, of American society, okay, to be rebellious, against, all right, Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah, okay, take on this technology, okay, and take on this concept of a technocracy, man, Okay, so America, Americans, people of America, for a while, World War One, World War Two, especially post World War Two, Americans, got the benefit from being, the nation with the world reserve currency, which gave, the currency of America the most spending power in the world. Okay, and for a time, the American people, they benefited off, they benefited off the crumbs, okay, of the global, all right, schemes of the elites, especially, the Edomites. All right, Jake, you wiggle up in there every now and then, we under the curses, and uh we was always a lower tier of society, but you always have, certain Jakes, even Jake communities, where they'll spring up, because of how strong the American dollar had become. Okay. But now what we're seeing, and I got a video I want to go into. Okay, the devils are dismantling, okay, have dismantled the American dream. They're on the last phase of it, and they're getting ready to birth a technocracy, man. Okay, and the birth of this technocracy is a complete end of these devils. Okay, thus said the Lord. Now, let's get a few precepts. I want to get this Isaiah. I got it in the AMP. Okay, so when you go here to the book of Isaiah, chapter 19, in verse 1, in the AMP, it says the mournful inspired oracle. Okay, and mournful inspired oracle. The oracle goes into prophecy, man. Okay, because America's about to have a funeral. Okay, and the elites global system is going to have a funeral as well. It's going to have a stillbirth. Okay, it's going to be born dead. You see, so the American, all right, old America is dead. Okay, we're at the funeral. We're getting ready for the funeral of America, man, and the funeral of the elites. All right, new global order that they plan to run. All right, that they're rolling out. That they plan to have up and running post America, man. Okay, it says a burden to be carried concerning Egypt. Okay, and the burden. All right, when you go into the footnote, it says, i.e., an urgent message. The prophet is under compulsion to proclaim, man, and that's why daily, the downfall of America is being proclaimed. The visions, that our forefathers had, the dreams, that they will have, the inspiration they had to go into these certain prophecies concerning the downfall of America. Well, all right, the prophecies are back, in their lot, and now we have this urgent, compulsion to proclaim the times we're in, man. Which is the end of this Edomite empire. Okay, and the centerpiece of America, well, Esau's empire has been America, aka Egypt. Spiritual Egypt. Okay, spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, the daughter of Babylon. Etc., man. Okay, it said, listen carefully. The Lord is riding on a swift cloud and is about to come to Egypt, and this is Yahweh Shai. You see, so when you go to Isaiah 19 and 1, it begins with Yahweh Shai coming to judge America, man. Which those missiles are going to hit America, and no chariots going to hit America, man. Okay, so America has a hell of a judgment, man, because this has been, the headquarters of the elites in the earth, in which they've forwarded a lot of wickedness, man. Economically, militarily, all right, witchcraft, enchantments. This has been their headquarters. It says the idols of Egypt will tremble at his presence, and the heart of the Egyptians will melt within them. Okay, because we're in a time of terrible judgment, man. Okay, and America is going to get it the worst. Okay, because it's going to end up with Yahweh Shai himself on the chariot. Okay, getting busy on America, man. Okay, with their heavenly host. You see, but before it gets to that point, it goes into, all right, the environment, okay, of the times before Yahweh Shai. Okay, Isaiah 19 and 2. So now it goes back. Okay, before Yahweh Shai appears in their chariot. Okay, to finish this place off, man. And to finish off Edomite authority in the earth. Okay, Isaiah 19 and 2. So I will provoke Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they will fight each one against his brother, and each one against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. Okay, and this is where we at now. all right, where there's nothing but division, and these things are intentional, okay, and it's the higher ups, okay, these elites that are causing division because they want to break this place down, all right, so America, all right, can be compatible, all right, American society can be compatible with this new world order, okay, because the new world order citizen is the exact opposite of an American citizen, man. Okay, a new world order citizen doesn't have these rights and these options and this freedom of movement. Okay, the ability to save money, to do homesteads and farming and no. That's the exact opposite of a new world order citizen, man. Okay, so we have the elites in the background, all right, that's causing this confusion, this division, all right, this turmoil, civil unrest. They're intentionally doing this because they want to break down the population of the American society, man. And this has been the plan in the making for centuries, and they really started to accelerate these things, from the 60s until now. Okay, we're going to show you a few things, going to a little history. Okay, I said I got two quick videos just to show you that they just been grinding on the American society, breaking it down. Okay, verse 3 says, "Then the spirit of the Egyptians will become exhausted within them, all right, and emptied out, and I will confuse, all right, their strategy so that they will consult, all right, so that they will consult the idols and the spirits of the dead and the mediums and the soothsayers, man." Okay, so what we're saying, all right, is this American society is being grinded down. This place is being worn out. People are more depressed than ever. People are unaliving themselves more than ever. People are tapping out on life. People are saying that they don't mind waking if they don't wake up in the morning. Okay, because this American system, the elites, have been tightened down the squeeze on this system for a while, and now it's to the point that the American people are exhausted, man. All right, these modern Egyptians, okay, are exhausted, man. They've been worn down. Okay, and this place has become what, a land of witchcraft, man. Because even when you go into Christianity, there's witchcraft, and people are leaving Christianity and going into, you know, straight up witchcraft, man. You see, that's the biggest growing religion, okay, in America is witchcraft and familiar spirits and fortune tellers, okay, because the elites are the biggest witches and warlocks in the world, man, and they use America as their platform to perform major enchantments in the world. And there's no one that's more enchanted than the American citizen, man. All right, these modern day Egyptians, man. Well, all is gonna fail. People trying to put you had witches trying to put curses on Trump. you know, yeah, you got Trump, with his spiritual guidance. These certain Christians, man, and these certain high up Christians, man, they're nothing but warlocks and witches, man. You see, spiritual cooking, that's the culture of America. Witchcraft is a cultural norm now. Okay, and that's part of the reason why the Lord is going to judge this place so severely as well. Okay, and it says, "And I will hand over the Egyptians to a hard and cruel master, man." Okay, and we're seeing that, under this guy Trump, man. He's really, stepping into their role as far as prophecy, man. All right, because he don't give a damn. You see, and Trump has fully given over the American societies, all right, the American society to the elites, man. Okay, to the technocracy, man. You see, and he's going about it with cruel measures, and it's only going to get worse. Okay, farmers catching hell, terror, small business catching hell, gas prices up, man. Okay, ICE agents, unaliving American citizens, man. Okay, and this is just a prelude. This is just a small prelude of what's to come, because it's gonna get far worse, man. We really ain't just seeing the cruelty of the devil, but it's on the way. You see? All right, what I want to do, just go into a little information, because in this video, I just want to go and show, really after the 50s, the elites, started to really accelerate, this new world order, putting the squeeze, okay, on the masses, all right, which they want people in extreme desperation, okay. They want to sabotage, they started to really sabotage the system, it became super corrupt, the rich The economy, was shifted to where the wealth, trickled to the few, all right, rich, okay, and the masses, continually became more poor and poor, and had less access to resources, man. Okay, because the whole thing was to get the masses dependent, on these few elite families. Okay, and in the midst of all right this transition, they plan on getting rid of a lot of the the common population. Okay, so there's been an economic attack. You people, the masses have been under economic warfare, all right, and chemical warfare through the poisoning, of the foods, and also, with Jake, with the food and the drugs, which the drugs affects everyone, especially now, with the opium, situation. But either way, all right, it's a intentional dismantling, okay, of this American system, okay. So let's go of American society, you know. So let's go to this real quick. Now, when you go, because the whole intention was always a new world order. That's why on the back of the dollar, because elites have always had a hand in the American government. Okay, and they just become stronger and stronger, to where now, they're in full control, and they're making the transition, you know. So over the generations, this American, okay, empire, the elites, have constantly gained more and more control, okay, of the American society, and this technology just really accelerated, their capability and control over the masses. Now, to show you that from the conception of America, there was always an agenda, okay, for America to be the stepping stone of a new world order. Okay, so that's why when you go into this real quick, we always get on the back of the dollar, all right, the currency, and this was even way before, America was the world reserve currency. Okay, they had this on the back of the dollar. It said the Latin phrase on the back of the dollar is "Novus Ordo Seclorum," which translates to "New Order of the Ages." Okay, because America was supposed to be, the stepping stone, all right, for the elites to converge and herd the world into this new world order. Okay, it says found on the Great Seal under the unfinished pyramid. You see that? The unfinished pyramid with the all-seeing eye. Okay, because them crowning, and finishing this pyramid is this new world order. Okay, and America was the foundation, okay, of this new world order agenda. You see? So it says by founding Father Charles Thompson, it says adapted from a poem by the ancient Roman, okay, by the ancient Roman poet Virgil, okay, the head that had a wound that was healed. All right, you can't make it up, man. Okay, because the American nation in the EU is a new Roman Empire with America being likened unto Rome itself. It signifies the beginning of a new American era rather than the modern New World Order conspiracy theory, which that's a lie. They try to water it down. All right, but it's all right. This was the elites, putting their intentions on the money, because through the American dollar, that's how they was able to put these nations, okay, in debt. Okay, this is how they was able to put these nations in debt, with this petrodollar. Okay, through the petrodollar and American military, man, the elites, have been able, to put these nations in submission and in debt. Okay, and now there's contention. As we get closer to these devil rolling this thing out, because the Lord, is causing controversy. Okay, but ultimately all these nations agree on this technocracy, man. Okay, and America, all right, has been intentionally being dismantled. Okay, for this new world order. Okay, you go here also. I got this information. Okay, it says I said, why was the 1950s called the fabulous 50s? Now, when you go here in the 50s, because for a short time, all right, because American dream, is a concept that comes from the 50s, when common people, began to have access, to, all right, resources, wealth. Okay. And this was mainly, for the Edomites. Like I said, a few Jakes, always slip through the cracks, make it to the middle class. All right. 'Cause, Jake are always the best engineers and, certain professional, careers Jake will get into. But when you go, it said the 1950s, okay, it says the 1950s earned the moniker fabulous due to the massive post-World War II economic boom, the rise of the American dream, and unprecedented cultural optimism. This era featured the explosive baby boom, mass, all right, suburbation, okay, it said the advent of rock and roll and thriving consumer culture that introduced new luxuries to the average household. Okay, so when you go to the 50s, America was fashioned, all right, to be, this model of how, the world's middle class aspired to be, and this, this was the elites, putting America on display is what to follow, man. Okay. But it was all a trap. And it was a trap to get people, addicted to, consumerism, get them addicted, sold on this American dream. Okay, to get the world, to look at America, as how to model their country after, with this economy, capitalism, democracy, and then even American culture. Okay, and it just kept becoming more and more degenerate, more defiled, more materialistic, until you have this world where people, worship, you know, um, status, people worship wealth, people worship, themselves. Okay, this is people, worshiping the image of the beast, man. He really made the image of the beast, look, alluring, in these times, man. Okay, now this was Rome. This was the time where Rome was at its splendid peak. You see, it says economic prosperity says unscathed by physical devastation of war. The U.S. experienced incredible industrial and economic expansion. Real wages and standards of living rose steadily, creating a robust, confident middle class. The suburban dream with government initiatives, all right, the GI Bill, all right, veterans and families could easily purchase affordable mass-produced homes in new suburbs. Mass-produced conveniences like television sets, air conditioning, and household appliances redefine comfort. Meanwhile, medical breakthroughs like Dr. Jonas, all right, Salk's polio, all right, Salk's polio juice transformed public health. Popular culture revolution, the decade birth, youth-driven cultural icons, teenagers shock parents and embrace the new rebellious sound of rock and roll, led by artists like Elvis Presley, while television became the central pillar of family entertainment, man. That's when a lot of those enchantments going out. And then through the music, they was able to enchant, man. You know? So you go to the 50s, man, and on up, man, the elites have been pushing mass enchantments. Okay. And then in the 70s, they really began, economic siege on the masses. Okay. Wages starting to stagnate. Okay. The dollar started losing, its purchasing power. Okay. And then they began to poison the foods. Okay. And I got, some videos I want to get into. All right. To go into this. So let's go here to this first video. All right. Fair use, fair use. Okay. This is not, for monetary gains, for educational purposes only. This is for fair use, fair use. I'm not making any profit, only for educational, all right, purposes only. So let's play this.
And breaking news alerts, not in the way that collapses are supposed to happen. No single catastrophic. Something is collapsing, not dramatically, not with sirens and breaking news alerts, not in the way that collapses are supposed to happen. No single catastrophic moment, no obvious before and after, just a slow, grinding, cumulative deterioration of the things that make ordinary daily life function. The services that used to work and now do not. The prices that used to be manageable and now are not. The institutions that used to be trustworthy and now inspire a kind of exhausted cynicism. The the small daily experiences that used to be unremarkable and are now either significantly worse or significantly more expensive, or both, always both. You feel it when you call a customer service line and wait 45 minutes for a problem that used to take 5. You feel it when your train is delayed for the 3rd time this week. And the reason given is staff shortages, which is the reason given every time now. You feel it when you go to book a doctor's appointment and the next available slot is in 6 weeks for something that needed attention now. You feel it when your energy bill arrives and you do the maths twice because the number cannot be right. It is right. You feel it when you drive through the town center that used to be full and now has more empty units than occupied ones. You feel it when you try to buy something simple and discover that the company which used to make it cheaply now charges 3 times as much for the same thing. You feel it when the public toilet is closed because there is no funding for the person to clean it, which sounds trivial, but is actually a fairly accurate summary of what has happened to public services across the developed world. The public toilet is closed because the money ran out, because the priorities shifted, because nobody at the level of serious political decision-making thinks about public toilets. And so they close, and nobody announces it, and you notice, and you feel the collapse, one closed public toilet at a time. This is the Wealth Records, where every video will change how you see money, history, and the systems controlling your life. If you are new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the collapse of everyday life has already begun. Not in some distant future, not in the countries you think of as collapsing, in the developed world. In the countries that were supposed to be the model of how things should work. Has the quality of your daily life improved or declined over the past 5 years? Not your personal circumstances necessarily, the quality of the systems, services, and infrastructure surrounding your life. Drop your honest answer below. We read every single comment at the Wealth Records. And this one is going to produce a comment section that reads like a very long complaint to management, which management will not read, but we will. To understand what is collapsing and why, you first need to understand what was built, because collapse is relative. You can only collapse from somewhere. And the somewhere that developed economies built from roughly 1945 to 1990 was genuinely remarkable. Public healthcare systems that provided medical treatment to everyone regardless of ability to pay. State education systems that gave every child access to a decent education regardless of postcode. Public transport networks that connected communities. Social housing that provided decent, affordable homes for people who could not afford the private market. Public parks, libraries, swimming pools, community centers, courts, police forces, and legal aid systems that made justice at least theoretically accessible. Pension systems that meant old age was not poverty. This infrastructure was not luxury, it was the agreement. The social contract that said we pay into the system collectively, and the system provides for us collectively. It was imperfect, unequal in its distribution, slow to reform, but it was there. And it worked well enough that most people in developed countries could live a decent life without being wealthy, without being connected, without being lucky, just by participating in the society around them. And then, starting in the 1980s, a political philosophy arrived that said the market does things better than the state, that efficiency comes from competition, not from public provision, that the goal should be smaller government and more private sector. And over the following 4 decades, that philosophy shaped policy in the United States, in the United Kingdom, across much of Western Europe. Services were privatized, funding was cut, regulation was reduced. The infrastructure of everyday life was handed piece by piece to entities whose primary obligation was to shareholders rather than to users.
And this is during their time of what they call Reaganomics. All right. And Ronald Reagan, he was the one that shifted, government policy to favor corporations. Okay. And to, diminish, the authority, okay, of the masses, especially the workers. Okay. So this is when you really see that shift, because American wages, stop increasing, with the production, okay, of these companies, in 78. Okay. And Reagan got into office. All right. He forwarded, all the agendas, okay, of the corporations, you see, and diminish, all right, the power, there was once amongst, the workers in these unions. Okay. And this is when, these corporations really started to get extremely corrupt. Politicians started to get extremely corrupt, and the system was always flawed from the beginning. Okay. But when you go into, from the 70s, until now, all right, this is when these corporations really, all right, started, to rob the masses, of their labor. Okay. While they got most of the profit, and people put in the same labor or more labor, and beginning to get less wages, man. Okay, while everything around them, was going up. Okay, and this was them beginning really putting the squeeze on society, man. Because they wanted poverty, they wanted dependency, they wanted desperation. Okay, they wanted America to slide into dystopian like it's doing now. Okay, because they want desperation. Okay, they want people with nothing to lose. They want people to purge. Okay, and then they want to eventually, all right, introduce this new, all right, style of government, which is technocracy, man, which is going to fix all the problems that they created in this old system, man. Okay, so let's play a little more.
And the collapse that is now visible is the accumulated result of 4 decades of decisions, made in good faith by people who genuinely believed the market was the answer, discovering that the market is a very good answer to some questions, and a terrible answer to others. The first dimension of the collapse is public services. Healthcare waiting lists across the developed world have reached extraordinary lengths. In England, over 7 million people are on waiting lists for treatment. In Spain, the public health system waiting lists have grown to record levels, with patients waiting months for specialist appointments that their condition needs now. In the United States, where healthcare was never fully public, the combination of cost and complexity has produced a system that is simultaneously the most expensive in the world and the least effective among comparable wealthy nations. Americans spend more per person on healthcare than any country on earth, and have lower life expectancy than most of Western Europe. The return on investment of American healthcare spending is, in the politest possible terms, not good. Public mental health services across the developed world are operating in crisis. In countries with universal healthcare, mental health waiting lists measure in months and sometimes years. In countries without, mental health treatment is simply unaffordable for a significant proportion of the population that needs it. The people who cannot access mental health treatment they need do not simply stop needing it. They manage, with varying degrees of success. And when the management fails, the consequences fall on emergency services, on courts, on prisons, on families, on communities. The cost of not treating mental health is not zero. It is just paid differently, less visibly, by more people. The second dimension of the collapse is infrastructure. Infrastructure is boring, deliberately boring. Good infrastructure is invisible. The road that does not have potholes, the train that arrives on time, the water pipe that does not leak sewage into the river. You do not think about these things when they work. You only notice when they stop working, and they are stopping working. In the United States, the American Society of Civil Engineers gives American infrastructure an overall grade of C-. Roads are deteriorating, bridges are structurally deficient, water systems are failing. The infrastructure investment gap, the maintenance and renewal that should have happened and did not, is estimated at over $2.6 trillion. $2.6 trillion of future collapse already paid for in deferred decisions. In the United Kingdom, the privatization of the water industry in 1989 produced water companies that paid out tens of billions in dividends to shareholders while infrastructure deteriorated, and sewage spilled into rivers and coastal waters at record levels. The regulatory system that was supposed to prevent exactly this failed to prevent it, because the regulatory system was staffed at a fraction of the level needed to meaningfully oversee an industry with strong incentives to cut maintenance costs and maximize returns. Across Southern Europe, infrastructure inequality within countries has widened. Spain has world-class high-speed rail between major cities, and rural communities that have watched local services disappear over decades. France has the TGV and also has regions that have watched local hospitals, post offices, schools, and public services retreat to a point where the presence of the state in daily life feels theoretical rather than real. The Yellow Vest protests were not primarily about fuel taxes. They were about what fuel taxes symbolized, the cost being imposed on people who could not afford it, by a political class that had systematically withdrawn the public services that would have reduced their dependence on cars. The third dimension of the collapse is housing. We have covered housing extensively across multiple videos, but in the context of everyday life, collapse, it deserves its place. Because the inability to afford housing is not just a financial problem, it is a daily life problem. It determines where you can live, which community you belong to, how long your commute is, whether you have. In country after country across the developed world, the ability to afford adequate housing has declined. In Australia, housing costs relative to income are at historic highs. In Canada, the same. In Germany, which was long considered to have a more rational and stable housing market than the UK, rents in major cities have risen dramatically. Berlin, which was famous for affordable rents, has seen dramatic increases in the last decade. In the Netherlands, the housing crisis has become so severe that it is consistently cited as a primary political concern. In Ireland, the combination of economic growth, insufficient construction, and an unregulated short-term rental market has produced a housing crisis that is
all 10 horn nations. This the whole beast system. Because the beast system has enjoyed, all these first world privileges, man. All right, but they're intentionally turning, these different European nations in America, all right, into dystopia. Okay, which is going to make the technocracy look more appealing, when they present it, as a fix-all. Okay. So this is going to be a hard crash, man. It's going to hurt the worst here in America, man. But they've been chipping away, all right, at this American dream to it's a nightmare now. They completely turned the American dream to a nightmare, to where suburban living, was achievable, extremely achievable, especially for Edomites. Suburban living was, it was an easy path. It was a guarantee for Esau. Okay, that suburban lifestyle, that middle class. Okay, the yearly vacations, savings, house paid for. Okay, pension, retirement. You see, boats, whatever, et cetera, man. You see, but now, it's people are barely. You barely can afford to exist. It's to the point now where people can barely afford to exist, man. Credit debt is at all-time high. People working, two, you have two people, you have 2-job households, you got couples, married couples, okay, they have to get multiple jobs amongst 2 people. You see? So people are being intentionally priced out, just so he can present this technocracy as the solution. I'd like to play a little more.
Teachers, nurses, police officers, the people that every society depends on to function, cannot afford to live in the cities where their work is needed, which is not a housing market failure in the technical sense. The market is working as markets work. Prices are clearing at a level where supply and demand balance. It is a political failure, a failure to recognize that housing is not a commodity like any other, that the market does not spontaneously produce adequate affordable housing at the scale societies need, and that without policy intervention, the market produces housing for investors and housing for the wealthy, and a crisis for everyone else. The fourth dimension of the collapse is community. This one is harder to measure, but no less real. Across the developed world, the physical infrastructure of community life is disappearing. In the United Kingdom, pubs are closing at approximately 50 per week. Libraries have been closed in their hundreds since 2010. Community centers have been sold. Post offices have been shuttered. Local banks have closed branches, replacing human relationships with apps that do not know your name. In France, and Spain, and Italy, small towns that were once self-sufficient communities have watched their services retreat. The school closed. The doctor moved to the nearest city. The pharmacy reduced hours. The post office is now a counter in the supermarket. The train no longer stops. And the community that was built around those services has frayed. People who needed each other because the services required them to interact no longer interact in the same way. The incidental social contact that community services produce, the post office queue, the pub on a Friday, the library on a Saturday, all of it disappearing, leaving a quieter, more isolated, more atomized version of the community it replaced, which produces the loneliness epidemic, which produces the mental health crisis, which overloads the mental health services, which are being cut. It is a circle, not a virtuous one. The fifth dimension of the collapse is trust. This one matters more than most people realize. Complex societies run on trust. Trust in institutions, trust in government, trust in experts, trust in the idea that the systems are basically fair and that participating in them is worth it. That trust is at historically low levels across the developed world. In the United States, trust in Congress, the Supreme Court, the media, the medical establishment, and most major institutions has been declining for decades, all at historic lows simultaneously. In the United Kingdom, a succession of political scandals, broken promises, and visible double standards has produced a political culture where the default assumption about politicians is that they are primarily serving their own interests. That assumption is not entirely wrong, which is why it is so damaging. In Southern Europe, the experience of austerity following the 2008 financial crisis, where ordinary people bore the cost of failures produced by financial elites, produced a political realignment that continues to shape politics today. Part that challenged the mainstream from all directions gained support, because the mainstream had failed visibly enough that supporting it felt irrational. Low trust societies are brittle societies. When trust in institutions is high, people accept short-term sacrifice for long-term collective benefit. They cooperate, they contribute. They believe the system is basically fair. When trust is low, people defect. They optimize for themselves because the collective arrangement no longer feels reliable, and the defection makes the collective arrangement work worse, which reduces trust further, which produces more defection. Another circle. The sixth dimension of the collapse is the cost of participating in normal life. This connects to the feeling broke video, but goes beyond personal finance. It is about the aggregate cost of being a normal, participating member of modern society, which has risen significantly across every developed country. The cost of keeping a home warm in winter, which has risen significantly across every developed country. The cost of getting from where you live to where you work, which in many countries with inadequate public transport requires a car, which requires fuel, which requires insurance, which requires maintenance. The cost of accessing justice if you need it. Legal aid has been cut in the UK to the point where many people cannot access legal representation. In the United States, meaningful legal representation was never universally accessible. The cost of participating in the economy digitally, which increasingly requires a smartphone, a data plan, a reliable internet connection, which are not luxuries. They are the infrastructure of modern participation. All of these costs have risen faster than wages for most people, and the cumulative effect is a society in which participating fully in normal life requires a level of income that fewer and fewer people have, which creates the two-tier experience that is increasingly visible across the developed world. People for whom the collapse is managed and buffered by wealth, and people for whom every dimension of it is felt directly. So what is actually happening here? Is this inevitable? Is decline the natural trajectory of developed economies?
Yeah, so and this is where we at, man, because see, Esau, his whole agenda, is first to get people to distrust these governments. It's meant, it's for people to distrust government. That's why you have a Joe Biden, all right, Sleepy Joe, all right, Kamala Harris. You see these characters who just pop up, goofy, laughing, falling up the stairs. And, okay, you see the terrible decision making. Well, it's meant for people to distrust these governments, okay, to mistrust their leaders, okay, so they can present something new, okay, a new form of government, a new form of leadership. This is why they need people to, trust AI, to look at AI as a guide, to look at AI as a legit replacement, okay, for these current governments. You see? So, these devils, they have walked this place down. These developed countries, these first world countries, America, the rest of these, EU nations, they have enjoyed, an era, of prosperity, an era of, to be able to have this convenience, okay, to be able to accumulate some type of wealth, to be able to retire, to, to be able to move around, okay. But their era is gone. Okay, their era is gone. Now it's a new dystopian era, okay, meant to herd people, okay, and break people mentally, all right, to where they crash out, in this purge, okay, that's gonna come in this civil unrest, all right, this civil unrest atmosphere, and the survivors of the civil unrest, man, they want to present the sea hip as a new way, okay, that's gonna outperform this old way, man. You see? So that's economically, but then you go here, to the food. Okay, let's go here to the food. All right, it's the same people that run, the finance, the economy, okay, are the same people that control what's in the food. Okay, they control what goes into education, will control what goes into the news, will control what's entertainment. Okay, so let's go here. All right. And it's all pushing towards a digital system that can be completely controlled. Okay.
Let me tell you what the richest men in the world are doing with their money right now. Bill Gates, the single largest private farmland owner in the United States, owns 270,000 acres across 18 states, often purchased quietly through the shell companies. At the exact same time, he has poured tens of millions of dollars into Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods, and Memphis Meats. The company is designed to replace the beef that used to be raised on land just like his. And in 2021, in a recorded interview with MIT Technology Review, he said this out loud: all rich countries should move to 100% synthetic beef. You can get used to the taste difference. Eventually, that green premium is modest enough that you can sort of change the people or use regulation to totally shift demand. Regulation, not your choice. And Gates isn't alone. Jeff Bezos has committed $100 million through his Bezos Earth Fund to establish a global network of research centers dedicated to replacing conventional meat with plant-based, fermented, and lab-grown alternatives. Bezos and Gates have also jointly backed Nature's Find, a Chicago company making meatless patties from fungus, and BlackRock and Vanguard, the two largest asset managers on the planet, are the second and third largest shareholders of Beyond Meat and have been increasing their stakes even as the company loses money. So the most powerful men and institutions on the planet are all moving in the same direction, away from real beef, towards something made in a lab. And now here's what's happening on the ground while all that money moves. The US cattle herd has collapsed to its lowest point since 1951. The cost of running a single cattle operation has gone up over $200 per cow in just 5 years. Generational ranching families are being squeezed off their own land. And while that's all happening inside the food supply itself, things are even darker than most people realize. A farmer in the UK was on camera revealing that processors are injecting potato starch directly into your beef to make it look better, to weigh more, and to sell for more money. And they're not legally required to even tell you. And a vice president at one of the biggest food companies in America was secretly recorded saying this about the meat his own company sells.
We have shit for poor people. Who buys our shit? It's not healthy. Now that I know what the in it, bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a piece of chicken that came from a 3D printer. You?
He was fired days later. And even if you're staying healthy and avoiding fast food meat, the steak you order at a fancy restaurant can legally be made with glue. And they don't even have to tell you. There are drugs in your pork that are banned in over 150 countries. The list goes on, and every single one of these things.
In America, all right, the American government, all right, is far more corrupt than any government in the world. You know, all these governments have their corruption, especially these Western, governments, these Edomite Western governments, man. But America, America just one big science lab, to where they just pumping Americans with everything. Things that are banned all over the earth, okay, are in everyday food supply in America. You see, and this is this devil finishing off, okay, America, man, by attacking the food supply. Okay, and there's been a major attack on the food supply, in America, especially since the C-19. Okay, but what this devil is allowed to do, to the food supply in America, man, is like, god damn. You see, glue, steaks made out of glue. You go to a restaurant, and think you're eating, prime, beef. Okay, and it's concocted, man. You see, most of the foods that we have access to, man. A lot of them, we eat the best of the worst, and the Lord with us. Okay, but there's a lot of food that that we have access to, man, that this man has heavily altered, man. So let's play some more.
is completely legal in the United States. Is it a coincidence that the people funding the replacement of beef are the same people whose asset management firms profit when real ranching fails? I'll let you decide. But what I can tell you is that behind every statistic and every billion-dollar investment, there are real families, real farms, and a way of life that is being squeezed from every direction. So I went straight to the source. Joel McCafferty, fourth-generation rancher with 100 years of family history farming on American soil. If anyone knows what this is actually doing to the people on the ground, it's Joel. So Joel, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, 1876, my great-grandfather came into the area on my mom's side. My grandfather on my father's side was here in 1903, and we've been on this ranch where we're at right now for 100 years.
And when did you first realize that something outside your control was threatening everything you built?
I read an article one time that my granddad was interviewed, and some of the same problems then are the same problems we have now. But the biggest change I saw was in the 70s. We had the food chart get inverted, started hearing about margarine being healthier than butter. Didn't really understand them. We weren't really prepared for it. There was no way to communicate to the public through social media or any ways like that. We started taking hits, and cattlemen started going out of business. I would say there was around, I think my numbers are fairly accurate, around 7 million of us in the 70s, and I think we're down to around 600,000 left. That's when we first started seeing.
From 7 million in the 70s to 600,000 left. You know, and like I say, man, in the 70s, man, these devils really started to come with this economic squeeze, man. You know, they really started to poison the food supply more and more. Okay. You know, he's this goddamn devil, man. You see, so what you're seeing them do now, man, he's just finishing off, okay, American society. Okay. And he's getting ready just to collapse this thing and bring civil unrest. You know, so America has been going through a controlled demolition for a long time. All right, because he said in the 70s there was 7 million ranchers to now 600,000, man. Okay, was this like a 80% decrease in ranchers, man? Okay, and they want to consolidate the food supply to themselves, man. Okay, and these data centers are finishing off, a lot of these farmers due to, the destruction of the environment, the depletion of water supply. Okay, these water aquifers that's underground, drinking water, the wells. Okay, so these things are done intentionally, man. So this man can create complete, desperation, so he can usher in, this new world order. So, let's see. Yeah, I'll leave that one there. I just want to play a little bit of it. And let me see. All right, lab grown meat. Here it is. And the Lord created everything in this perfection, man. And for him to play the Most High, he has to go above and beyond to destroy, the creation. He has to destroy the creation just to make it seem like he has some better way. He has to spend a lot of money and resources and time sabotaging, creation just to make it seem, as if he had, some type of better way. Okay. So let's go here. Let's get a few precepts, man. Okay, because this man is off the chart, man. And his wickedness, people sleep on this man's wickedness, and he's been doing it for a while. There's starting to be, a more of an outcry, especially with, this technology and this AI. People are saying, this nigga's going too far with this technology, this AI, he's doing too goddamn much. Okay, so there's starting to be an outcry, but the damage is already done. He's already, at the finish line, close to the finish line, or to the point to where he can, cause the chaos, okay, and swoop the flip and hit the switch, flip the switch, okay, on the new order, man. Okay, so let's go here, because the water, how about Shema Shai, that we have a power, that's going to intervene. Okay. The water, how about Shema Shai for that? So you can go to Job, I think it's 21. We'll read down a little bit. Let's see. How to read in the AMP. This is Job 20, 21. 20. So let's get this in the book of Job, chapter 20 and verse. All right, this is Job 20 and 22. It says, in the fullness of his excess, all right, of great abundance, because the devil, he's in the place now where he's hoarded, the world's wealth, the world resources. All right, he even owns, the labor of the earth, man. People are indebted to him. Most people are indentured slaves to this system. They have no choice but, to work 2-3 jobs. Okay, because of their life costs so much. You see, so this man even owns people's labor. Okay, but as he is in the fullness of his excess and great abundance, or his sufficiency, as the scriptures say, he will begin to be in trouble. Okay, because there's a lot of things that this devil is behind on, and that's what's causing him to rush. There's certain things that he's behind on. You see. And then you have now, this new wave of uproars, okay, against what this man is trying to do. It said the hand of everyone who suffers will come against him. He is miserable on every side, man. So now the Lord is finna start getting at these elites, man. See, now the Lord is starting to address these elites, man. Okay, I say making them rush their agenda, causing certain things to backfire. All right, and they still have certain things they're going to accomplish because they have to get to a certain point within this, man, before the Lord intervenes. Okay. It says when he fills his belly. All right. So when he gets to the point, switching this thing over to the new system, getting the new system up and running, the digital currency is the only thing that's accepted now. Okay. When you get to that point, all right, the Most High will send his fierce anger on him and will rain upon him while he is eating, man. So in the midst of him getting ready to enjoy this new system, getting ready to see the fruits of all his labor and wickedness and schemes, all right, the Lord is going to intervene, man, all right, by causing this war, okay, to get out of hand, which is going to usher in who? Yahweh Shai, okay. It says he may flee from the iron weapon, okay, which is the missiles. They're going to go in bunkers, all right, but the bow of bronze will pierce him through. Because this nuclear war is going to destroy, all right, this man's infrastructure, the data centers, all this DPI, digital public infrastructure, is going to be destroyed, man. And he's put so much into this, man. Because this is an extension of this infrastructure is an extension of Esau, man. Okay, this is his this infrastructure. It's his life works, over the generations, man. These devils, all right, starting from the Renaissance and you go into the Enlightenment period, man, when these devils really started to, push forward these philosophies throughout the world, man. They've been working towards this thing, man. So this is Esau's life work, man. Okay, it's going to be destroyed in the day. You see, it said the arrow is drawn forth, all right, and it comes out of his back after passing through the body, So the Lord going to destroy this thing through and through. Okay? It's going to destroy this system through and through, man. Okay? And this devil, he's going to get ready to go into captivity, man. This nuclear war is going to destroy this devil's ambition, man. All right, and Yahweh Shai, no chariots, man, are just going to obliterate, okay, this whole new world order scheme. You see, Yahweh Shai and the chariots going to completely obliterate this whole scheme. Okay, it said, yeah, the glittering score point comes out of his gall. Terror's march, all right, terror's march in upon him. Yeah, man. So this war, is going to put an end. Like if someone, was to get hit with arrows after arrows, it will be an end to them. Okay. Now America gonna get nuked. It's gonna destroy. This war is gonna destroy a lot of Edomites, and we know the elites. Okay, they're gonna be in the bunkers, and it's gonna destroy everything that they built up, man. All right, that's why Scripture speak about all the works thereof shall be burnt up, man. When you go into the book of uh was it Second Peter, we talk about the earth, all right, or the heavens being on fire. Okay, when you really go into that, speaking of these cities, man, especially here in America. Okay, because this is, these cities represents what they're the glory of Esau's rulership. Because heaven, goes into rulership. Okay, it's a context of heaven that deals with rulership. Okay, so these these missiles are going to destroy, all right, every American city. Okay, everything in America, man. Okay, and America is home of mostly data centers, man, which is the lifeline of this AI. Okay, this new world order. Okay, it says yes, the glittering point comes out of his gall, terror's march, all right, in upon him. Complete darkness, misfortune is held in reserve for his treasures, and unfanned fire will devour him. It will consume, all right, the survivor of his tent. Okay, so this devil, he's done, man. You see, this devil, he's finished, man. All this time he spent working towards this new world order, he was only working his way towards his destruction, man. Okay, the destruction of his empire. Okay, mass destruction, of this global system. You see, this whole technocracy agenda is gonna be completely destroyed, man. Okay, and then and the survivors of the judgment is going into captivity. That's their judgment, man. Okay, and the ones that die, guess what? They're going to be born into captivity. You heathens that die, you Edomites, and you heathens that die, you're going to be born into a captivity, man. Because it's going to be 1,000-year captivity, man. So there's going to be several lifetimes, all right, that you heathens coming back in captivity, man, after this great destruction, man. Okay, you see? So everything that you devils, okay, work for is going to fail. Verse 28 said the produce and increase of his house will depart. Yeah. So all the real wealth that the devil has, schemed and heeded to himself, okay, it's going to depart. It's going to be transferred to the nation of Israel, man. Okay, it's going to be transferred to, all right, the elect of Israel, man. Okay, all the true wealth, all right, that this man, has amassed in this wicked empire, man. Okay, his possessions will be dragged away in the day of the Most High's wrath, man. This is the wicked man's portion from the Most High, and the heritage decreed and appointed to him by the Most High. So this is Esau's portion. This is his inheritance, man. Okay, is the destruction of his empire and captivity. Then he's gonna be done away with, man. Okay, so everything he's doing is leading to this nuclear war. All right, and this nuclear war, that's the part asunder of time, okay, which is going to end Esau's empire, going to kill his empire, okay, and it's going to be the beginning of our everlasting righteous kingdom, man. Okay, and this man, all this wealth and everything that he's hoarded up to this point, all this scheming and this wicked economy, there's nothing but a scam. All that wealth is going to come to Israel, man. So yeah, this man is done. All right, Esau, he's completely done. Okay, he's gonna reach this point to where only thing left that he can do is just finish off what the Lord has him assigned to do on the left hand side, man. And he's out of there, man. So yeah, just want to go into that, Lord will, you brothers. All right, and you people so edified. Till next time, I say shalom, going out shalom, a Bible,